Today, we're joined by Aaron Levisay, a proud U.S. military veteran who dedicated nearly 30 years to service, retiring as a finance management supervisor. He's also a family man, a decorated South Dakota Air National Guard honoree, and a voice for faith, history, and constitutional conservatism. Let's get into the show. The following program is part of the Patriot Broadcasting Project, brought to you by the Scene Projects Podcast Network. Well, welcome into a very important episode of the Patriot Broadcasting Project. I'm your host, Bubba Starts, and with me today is Aaron Levisay. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bubba, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I actually just got off the golf course down in Niobrara to Tonka Golf Club, man. I've had a great morning.
Awesome. Yeah, you're in a good mood then.
Yeah, it was wonderful being able to go out and to shoot content and support local businesses, right? Which is what we're all about. But also supporting, the truth. And that's really what the Patriot Broadcasting Project is all about, getting information out there that I think some of our citizens of South Dakota and of the country really, we're not as informed as we should be. And you're really working on some great stuff. And I want to give you the floor. Just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory. Obviously, we talked a little bit about it in the intro, but give us a little bit of backstory, and then we can talk about the awesome stuff that you're working on right now.
Oh, thanks, Bubba. Yeah, well, my name's Aaron Levisay. I was born, don't hold this against me. I was born in Iowa. Both my parents are from Iowa. But most of my life, I've lived in South Dakota, lived Vermilion, Huron, Pierre, when I was a kid, but then moved to Sioux Falls in 1980. And then I graduated from, those that are local here in Sioux Falls would know, what's now the Pavilion. So that shows you how old I am, back many years ago. Then I got in the Army in the early 90s, and I was there I was active duty. And then I transitioned over. We moved back to South Dakota. We kind of moved around a little bit. Then I got into the South Dakota Air Guard, and at first I was just part-time, but then it became full-time, particularly after 9/11. I deployed to various places over the world, particularly in the Middle East and the Far East, Iraq from 07 to 08. Got back, and then it was a full-time gig, so I took it, and then I retired in 2021 there. And so I've been retired since 2021, but as I'd like to tell people, retirement looks different for different people, and there's a whole lot more freedom to do, if that makes sense. So I've just been kind of trying to now effect more freedom for our country, and particularly for our state, in areas that it heretofore hasn't had. And so I've been working with some legislators just to get legislation passed for basically some structural problems that we have in the state and actually on the national level, but not to enact another subsidy or mandate, but mainly to have free markets where we have a lack of them.
No, and you had sent me some really interesting material about some things that they've actually had for quite a while, in the state of New Hampshire, that actually makes it a free market. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, because we hear that term a lot, but what we have, and especially since I'm going to assume it's since 08 and Obamacare, that it kind of gave the insurance companies a lot of oversight on what exactly we pay for premiums, and it gave them a lot of control over that. And we're not in a free market, and I think a lot of people don't understand that at all.
And actually, Bubba, it was actually that way before Obamacare. Obamacare just basically doubled and tripled down on everything that was wrong, really going back to the end of World War II. And so in a blanket sense, essentially what we had at the end of World War II is we were trying to finish up beating Hitler and Japan, rightfully so. There was a bill which passed through Congress that basically treated, it was the McCarran-Ferguson Act is what it was. And it basically said, all right, we realize you can't pay your war workers very much because we're under wage and price controls because we're at a war, right? So what we'll do is we'll allow businesses to deduct health insurance as on taxes. And while sounds really good, right? But the fact is, ever since then, it's distorted everything to the point where hospitals, insurance companies, doctors, dentists, everybody within actual healthcare provision of some sort got and said, when you go to a hospital, when you go to that, not what does it cost, but what's your insurance? You see what I'm saying? So again, the worst things that have happened have been over 7 decades, 8 decades, I'm sorry. But because of that, people have been saying since before you and I were born in the 60s, hey, the whole problem is the distortion. All Obamacare did, as Clinton Care would have done before that, was just double and triple down on the same problem. And the problem, again, is lack of transparency. I bet you could tell me right now, generally, what your microphone costs, right, Bubba?
Oh, of course.
You could tell me at least how much your pair of shoes cost, or at least a pair of shoes for men. Okay.
Of course.
What's an office visit?
No idea.
Yeah. What's a knee replacement generally?
Yeah. No idea.
Yeah. So again, how can we have a rational system where if we have the producers and the consumers, right? Because this is an economic arrangement. Yes, it's different because it's life-saving. If only one side is able to define what's usual and customary, and you can't negotiate because, this is my arm's using some economics here. Demand and supply, and where they meet is price. Well, when you don't have prices, how do you know whether it's good, bad? Might be good, might be bad. You don't know. So there's one whole half of the equation that's been missing for 80 years. And so because of that McCarran-Ferguson Act that I mentioned, the odd thing about this is while they made this as a general thing for employers everywhere, they also made a nod to federalism. But again, it almost made it worse because now they made states responsible for regulation of health insurance. So you almost to have a free market in healthcare, sadly, you almost have to go state by state and free it up. So that's where my South Dakota efforts are there.
Well, and at least we have the ability to change it at a state level instead of having to make, more federal legislation, which a quagmire that is to do anything unless all the pockets are getting lined at the same time to get anything done. So very grateful. And I know our state government works much in the same way, and it is a microcosm of the federal government. The more legislators that I interview on this show, and the more I learn about, the people that we have in Pierre and in Washington, that the game is very much the same. The players merely changed names. And I'm so thankful that we have someone in South Dakota. I'm a South Dakotan and a proud one at that I want to see change. I want to see people have a chance to get access to healthcare that's fair, right? Because insurance premiums continue to skyrocket. They are now, higher than they've ever been, I would assume. And the quality of healthcare has continued to go down as well. And we saw that firsthand when earlier this year, my father-in-law broke his leg pretty gruesomely, right? And they were like, well, we're just going to send you home and we'll do antibiotic treatments for there. Well, he has an infection on his leg, and we're talking about life-threatening infections, and they don't want to pay for him to stay in the hospital because of the insurance companies. And I do believe he's old enough to be covered by Medicare, but they're trying, and it was a fight just to get him the care that he needed and deserved. And it was very eye-opening to me to see that, and to see how hard, my mother-in-law had to fight with these people to be like, no, you're going to do what's right and not just what makes sense in your ledger book.
Right. Well, and this is the problem because everything's distorted. So the sad part, Bubba, that basically I am letting you know and letting your listeners know is that it's been distorted for 8 decades. So it's been distorted. So where are in most parts of America where we find most dissatisfaction? Lack of transparency, really, right? It's generally in the health, education, and in the pension areas. I mean, those are oddly enough, those are the 3 that are the most expensive, either at the state or federal level. just a little bit for you folks to know, and for you to know, is that this was so bad in the first Trump term. He basically had his HHS director at that time, I can't remember who it was, basically, but he sent out an EO that basically told the hospitals, you will post your prices. In 2019, he did that. So that was like decades. Nobody thought of that. And I was like, God, I don't know why you didn't do that. Now that he's back in office again, he has again reiterated that. So I think I sent you some things from a patients advocacy group where all they do is, and then by the way, that organization was run by a former healthcare CEO, and she got out of it because she just, I can't take this anymore. And they list prices, or they're trying to list prices for basically every hospital in America. And they basically also list a scorecard for like which hospitals in every state, in every single state of the union, are compliant with President Trump's 2019. And then once again, he reiterated it in 2021, right before he left the first time. And then again, of course, this year when he was reelected. Which ones are fully compliant? In South Dakota, do you know how many there are that are fully compliant with posting all their prices, Bubba?
3.
No, that's actually over optimistic. There's one. It's down in Viborg. That's it.
Wow. Well, and we know, having lived here, that our healthcare options in the state of South Dakota are extremely limited.
Right. And you also know, and because I sent this to you, but there's a professor of business up at SDSU that South Dakota is number 1 for medical debt in the nation. Number 1, not number 2, not number 50, not number 14, number 1. So we have a problem. We have a
very urgent one at that needs attention, because how can you be free if you are saddled with all of this debt that you are just working the rest of your life to pay off and never getting out from under the weight of that? I can't imagine.
And never knowing what that debt actually is. I mean, you could be done with something with a hospital and then years later have another bill come through. And you don't even know what it's for, because everything's all through codes. And one of the interesting things about it, Bubba, is that, everything is done basically via medical coding. Guess what? They won't allow the public to see what the codes are. So data analysts can't even figure out. Well, of course, we don't even know their billing procedures. Now, some of that is changing, but it's really slow. But I mean, that was why I was, chatting with you and sent you a bunch of those things, that the only way this is ever going to be solved at our state level or any case is there will be other things we can do. But the first thing is, what does it cost? Please, just what is the average cost for X, Y, and Z procedure or this and that, right? Like that's just about as basic as an economic transaction as you can have, right?
Well, and I think that you have to start from that place of transparency before you can even begin the discussion about what do we do. Well, we have to know what is actually going on. And so this is what your mission is, first off. And so what are you working on, Aaron, to kind of bring that about? Are you working with legislators to bring some kind of bill to the table and to have something enacted that forces I mean, it sounds like the president has already issued an EO, an executive order into this. Why we shouldn't have to further, implicate these people into it, you would think. But what is it that we can do as citizens to support these efforts as well?
Well, yes, the first thing that I'm trying to do is what's known as an APCD. And that is an all-payer claims database here in the state of South Dakota, which is exactly what they did in New Hampshire. And for those people that don't know, basically what happened was there was a bill that was passed in New Hampshire back in 2004, 2005. And all it is the Department of Insurance in a state. And you can do this also with Medicare and Medicaid down the road if you want to, but let's just leave it with commercial payers, right? Every insurance company that was licensed within the state of New Hampshire, basically they took all of the claim data, every single omnibus claim data, redacted the names, and by procedure, so they redacted the names, so there was no HIPAA violations or anything like that, and basically just averaged out what each one would cost if you were going to pay cash. So essentially, that was the closest thing that they ever got to a market price. Basically, what was the physician or dentist reimbursement? Because it wasn't just doctors, it was also dentists too. And so that was really wonderful. And they had it. There was a University of Michigan economist that studied that and said, wow, these guys over 10 years, it was interesting how New Hampshire's prices were either steady or went down, even with an aging population. Now, I know that correlation is not causation, Bubba, but it would seem to me that the transparency at least played some kind of a role. And then with the links that I sent you in your email, people that live in New Hampshire, I mean, it's a public site. You can go on there and you can say, okay, I have this kind of insurance in the state of New Hampshire, and I need to get an ambulance, and how much would it cost if I lived? And then it would tell you, okay, for this ambulatory cost, like I'm not saying everybody would necessarily pay out of their pocket, but at least they would know what it would be, so that if they would get an insurance bill back, they could say, no, the state says this is what it really costs. I'm not going to pay this. So my point is that not only do they give you the average, because the average insurance cost really basically is the market price. It's not a true market price, but it's the closest we have. You see what I'm saying? So now, since they did it, they were sort of the pioneers there. Since then, 20 other states have passed this. Latest one, I think, was Louisiana a couple of years ago in 2022. So the point is, I want to bring this to South Dakota so we can go on a state government website, okay, where they can list the average costs if you had this insurance for these procedures, much the same way that New Hampshire does. That is the legislation that we brought before the Commerce Committee, the South Dakota Commerce Committee, because they deal with insurance. Now, you'd think it'd be health, but it's not. It's actually commerce, since it's an insurance thing. And so I brought it up before the state legislature this past year.
Well, and unfortunately, I know it's going to be an uphill battle because healthcare is such big business, one of the biggest industries, if not the biggest industry in South Dakota.
It's the
so
biggest.
Obviously, you're going to have very, very interested parties with deep pockets lobbying against any kind of legislation that affects their bottom line. So
Right.
It's an uphill battle. I think it's going to take a lot of, public outcry for something like this to get people to change their minds. And I think that, with what we're doing here at the Patriot Broadcasting Project and the Scene Projects as a whole, is raising that vibration of the public's voice, to have people like yourself on and to give you a platform, because I guarantee any of the news organizations, of which there are very few, are going to have you on to talk about this when their major advertisers are those medical companies, right? So independent media is the only way that we can get this information out there. What are some of the other challenges maybe that you're facing getting this through? Do you have legislators that are willing to bring this to the floor and try and convince their other legislators to support it?
Yeah, I mean, and just to let you know, the main legislator I've been working with, and he would be a great interviewee, which would be Representative Aaron Levisay, down in Harrisburg. Great guy if you've never interviewed him. And he's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus in the state of South Dakota. So he's a free market guy from the word go. The main thing that it is just trying to get people to understand. And now the problem that we had is that this was a very expensive year. So they were just like, we can't do it, because I am asking for one more full-time person, at least in the Department of Insurance. Yes. And I was very forthright in saying, look, you're going to have to, I'm somebody who doesn't like government generally being outside of its prescribed. But if government's made this problem, you're going to have it, lower down at the state level to fix the problem that got made at the federal level sometimes. And until we would actually get a free market, then maybe you wouldn't need the government agency again. But right now, it's the only one that would know where the insurance data is, Bubba. There's no other place that collects it. So, but it was told that it was just a little bit too expensive. I think the prison had a lot to do with that.
No, right? Yeah, that.
So there was no money for anything, and I thought, I don't want to get you started, right? But it was funny being there. So basically, Representative Allward tabled it. So he didn't kill it; he tabled it. There were a lot of people that were like, "Well, this is a great idea," particularly since it's already been done in 20 states, and it's been done well. And if we're able to do that, and the other thing is basically people to know that this patient advocacy group that rates all the hospitals in all the states is there, and they have all these wonderful videos that has worked. I think I sent you one where like the state of Montana went direct with their state employees to just contract directly with the hospitals. Their state employees got better in terms of better health care checks. The costs went way down. The state of Montana health department actually gave money back to the legislature. Now tell me.
And that's just using these things in the side of the government to serve the employees of the government. Imagine what it could do across the board for all of the private citizens. And
Exactly.
I need to quit using that term. I know Aaron Prince is going to have my head for that, but we'll get to that in another one. I don't know what to call everyone anymore. The more I learn about the law, the more I learn we don't know anything about it as average people. And it's been such a big reason why I started this program last year, around October, was just to have real conversations. Somebody please come on and tell us what's actually going on. And we've been very fortunate to have a couple of representatives, Tessa Schwans and Bobby Andera have been on with us. We've had U.S. congressional candidate James Bialotta come on with us recently out of Rapid City. And the more you know, the more outraged you become. And
sadly.
I can only imagine that this is not going to be something that happens overnight because of the lobby of the medical, industry here in South Dakota, and how much they've contributed to the campaigns of, I would assume, a vast majority of the legislators that are in office already.
Well, and the thing of it is, what we're going to have to really ask ourselves, Bubba, is do we want to continue with this 8-decade cartel market? And market, by the way, should be in quotes, because that's right. Or do we want to actually try the one thing we've never really tried, whether it was Hillary Care or Obamacare or anything else, an actual free market? I mean, we don't argue about things that are already working. I mean, did you ever argue about where you got your tires at a tire shop? No, because you already, it says, hey, we'll do your tires for this amount. And then we don't argue about things that work.
Well, and then I was able to compare their price and service against the price and service of everyone else because I had all the data. And that's really all we're asking for here to begin with. And the legislation that you're, working to get brought forth in the House and Senate is to just give us some transparency. Tell us what things actually cost, show us the data, and let the market decide the price, not a few people behind locked doors with locked file cabinets and just saying, well, no, this is what it's going to cost. And it depends on who you're insured with, whether you get the care that you need. And, no more surprise bills. You go and you can't get a straight answer out of anyone. And then you're saddled with tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt that you will spend years or
the rest of your life. Just go ahead and say the rest of your life. The rest
and that is
of
the
your
point,
life.
right? Yeah. That is the point, is to keep these free people in debt, which makes us all slaves. It makes us tax slaves and debt slaves. And I think as more people wake up to that fact that we're already living in this crazy caste system that is set up around us already, but yet we speak about how free we are in this country, and we have no idea what real freedom actually is.
One of the problems that we had in the 20th century, that I think you and I were both born in, sadly, Bubba, is now that I've really studied the history and stuff like that, it was sort of, at least after the first third, with the New Deal particularly, we basically didn't realize, but we were basically going back into neo-feudalism. I mean, when you think about much of how society has really basically gone since then, it's really neo-feudalism. It's really one of the great errors of the 20th century. In the 21st century, we really should be getting back to actual freedom and actual liberty. And that means really in all spheres. In the economic sphere, we're extremely constrained in the United States. So sadly, let's just go back to what worked before that.
Well, you're talking some big ideas here, Aaron, and I love it. But it starts with small steps. It starts with transparency. And that is what America demanded when the mandate was delivered in November with a landslide win for President Trump. And we want to know what's going on. And not that we've had a lot of it since he's taken office, but we need to continue to demand it at every single level. And it sounds like with what we're doing, and because we have a blueprint for this from 20 other states, we know that it's not just possible, but that it actually works to bring the cost of healthcare down. And I think that's something that every South Dakotan and every U.S., every person living in the United States could be thrilled about.
I mean, think about it. Think about how much, at least since in my memory, every presidential election, pretty much since '92, healthcare has been one of the top 5. And what, sadly, again, with the 20th century mindset being so dumb, it was always double and triple down on all the stuff that made it horrible from, but finally now with the internet age that we've had for about 30 years or so, people are starting like, wait a minute. The real problem is we don't have prices. The real problem is the consumer's out of it. The real problem is we don't have transparency. If we had that, passing a law to establish a market is different from another subsidy or another kickback or another restriction on info. So we're doing something different here in the state of South Dakota, and hopefully nationwide, and just saying, most of this stuff is going to get fixed. And so we don't have to keep discussing it forever and ever, right? If we just have a free market, it just takes care of so many things.
Awesome, Aaron. Well, we're going to be following closely. The door is open anytime you need to come back and give us some updates on all of this. I am definitely going to have Representative Alward, you said, is how you say his name?
Yep.
We're going to definitely get him on the show as well to talk even more about this and maybe a little bit more about the legislative side and what we can do as voters to enact some change and to really put some pressure on our representatives that are in Pierre. So thank you so much for taking some time for me today. And thank you for being part of the scene.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much.